So the goal from today's conversation, I'd like to break it down into really three parts. We'll start with some AI foundations and strategy. I'll have some questions around those. Then we'll pivot and talk about adoption. Adoption, obviously, being a key challenge around AI. And then we'll talk a little bit about ROI and metrics. And then if we have more time, we'll probably do some rapid fire questions. Otherwise, we can end it there. So why don't we start with Laura and John, both of you introducing yourself very briefly, talk about what you do at your companies. Laura, maybe we kick it off with you.
Sure, absolutely. So, hi everybody. Laura Cole. I'm the CIO at Morningstar Financial. We are an independent investment research and data provider around the world. We have about 11,500 employees and operate in about 30 countries, give or take.
Lovely. John.
Great. John Macrina, pleasure to be here speaking with you guys on this topic today around AI. With the NCAA, I lead up technology as the CTO. The NCAA is a membership-wide organization that supports over 1,100 institutions throughout the nation, from a Division I to a Division III level sports. And we host about 91 championships a year across those three levels and across many different mediums, including TV and also radio and streaming.
Fantastic. Super excited about this conversation. Let's start with the first topic, which is really around AI foundation, AI strategy. And I don't think either of you or anyone in the audience would be surprised when I say that a big percentage of the AI work that companies are trying to do are not driving outcomes just yet, right? Gartner's published some metrics. MIT recently published something as well. For folks who don't know, Asana also has this work innovation lab wherein we publish research out of that. One of the more recent research papers talked about 67% of organizations are struggling to scale beyond their AI pilots, right? And then there's a lot of excitement and pressure coming from CEOs of wanting us to go drive AI transformation. And on the other side, we've got our CFOs and finance counterparts who talk about how do we think about ROI and impact through this, right? So to set the stage, Laura, I'll come to you. Can you briefly share where are you on this AI transformation journey? And also from your vantage point, how do you see the CIO's role in orchestrating this shift from scattered pilots to true enterprise-wide scale?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting. Morningstar is very decentralized. So I own more of these central functions and services. So thinking about infrastructure, cloud, data center, all the corporate systems, and employee technology. But if we've got about 6 different business units, and so they have their own product leaders. So my role is to provide those common services to all of those product leaders, but they function sort of in their own way. So we were pretty early adopters of AI. We started building our own products, which I would say now are pretty much, thrown away and we're starting new. So I think, as each product team does their own work, I think what's happening is now from this decentralization, this shift of, can you help us go faster? What should we be using? What tools are out there? And sort of bringing those teams together instead of operating independently on what's working for each of them, what they should consider. How do I spin up licenses faster? How do we help them with their pipeline and development? So it's a shift from each product team kind of doing their own thing, saying, don't help me, I'm good, to, wow, how can we go faster and how can we learn from each other? So we're starting to see a little bit of a shift there. And that's where I'm stepping in to help the teams go faster. And then also dealing with buy versus build.
Yeah.
So we built everything before. Now it's like, I don't know that we need to build everything. So it's bringing the right tools together for the right purpose.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. John, you're coming at this from a different angle, building a more structured program that's more grounds up, right? How does that change your view on an IT leader's role to drive this transformation?
Yeah, I think it's more leading from the front. I think very early on with AI, and in most cases, the kittens get out of the box, right? And you end up chasing a lot of science projects throughout any organization, not just NCAA. You're trying to establish value and trying to establish a technology that could be reusable and valuable for the business. So in starting out that way and quickly realizing that there's more risk to doing it that way, we kind of pulled it back together and started thinking about a structured approach to how we get AI use cases approved, really get the value proposition behind the use case, right? Some are driving workplace productivity, like you said. Some are cost plays, some are revenue plays, and some are just plainly innovation plays, right? New ways to think, new ways to work, right? So so for us, it's about making sure that we have bottoms up and top down support for a lot of the efforts that we do, and making sure that we're aligning them to a lot of the company goals and objectives that we have for this year and beyond. So what we do is we tend to make sure we have the use case completely sealed. Make sure we have the basics of AI, which I find a lot of people overlook the
Mhm.
need to have information architecture before AI, and also from a process perspective, to make sure that we have SOPs and process mapping done on key and core functional areas, so that when we do and when we want to get to that agentic sort of experience and that workflow experience, that we actually have a structured foundation and that we understand the way our business needs to work before we just jump into a technical solution, right? So we're doing a little bit of back and forth, a little more structure, a little more governance around how we want to do that. At the same time, we're trying not to impact speed, speed to business and enablement. So it's a delicate balance,
Yeah.
but with a very keen focus on structure.
Yeah. For us as well, that balance I think has been the key because it's a transformation which truly is bigger than the other transformations we might have led in our careers, right? And so the way we've tried to balance I think of this more as a T kind of approach, wherein give enough horizontal sort of access for people to play around and experience AI. And you can't sort of necessarily weigh that down by too many use cases and ROI. You want people to get comfortable and excited about this. You want to measure adoption around that. And then to your point on the use cases, how do we sort of identify what are the use cases worth going solving and stuff like that? Laura, I'll come back to you on your decentralized model. How does that model handle the tension between the broad access and the focus bets that you're making?
Yeah, there's a few things that have happened actually this year where, we always have we charge back to our business units, and it's usually that friction point of like, what am I really getting? How come it costs too much? We did a really good job this year of focusing on the big pie of like, here's where our resources are located, here's what we support, here's how we benchmark against other companies like our own. So there wasn't really conversation around that, but there was specific conversation around the AI components and what we're doing to add value and to help there. And we didn't really get a lot of pushback because now we're trying to help them measure. So the investments that they're making, which they're accountable for, by the way, in the business unit. So if people want to spin up Copilot,
Hmm.
they pay for it. But we can help them with the ROI and looking at, hey, you have this many licenses. Here's how many different things that you've used it for, and here's potentially the productivity that you would see out of it. So we can help them with whether or not they're making the right choices and investments and providing those options for them. But ultimately, it's about accountability within the different business units that we're trying to push onto them as well.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
Let's shift our conversation a little bit to adoption, right? All of this strategy foundation really goes nowhere if the adoption is not there, right? Otherwise, we're just extending tools that people are not using, spending a whole lot of time and money around it, and not seeing the value come out of that, right? Um, Something that my finance CFO talks about: if adoption's not there, if adoption friction is there, you can talk ROI all day, but that's where ROI goes to die, really. John, I'm going to come to you. Why do you think there is this gap that is so wide for adoption, and how does it show up in the form of maybe say shadow IT, shadow
Yeah,
AI?
yeah. I think one of the primary reasons why there's a lot of adoption friction is that organizations are just trying to do too much too quick with AI, and the use cases are too complex for the business to understand, for anybody really to understand. What I like to do to try and manage adoption friction is to make sure that we start somewhere simple, somewhere that's digestible for the business, where they understand how AI can help them day to day. For example, we mentioned Copilot before. Copilot is something that could really help with adoption friction because it's embedded within the suites that most organizations are using to manage their day-to-day operations and activities, right? Whether it's email, Excel, PowerPoint, so on and so forth. It's an easy way for them to start to understand how to use AI to benefit them in their everyday jobs. So there's very many use cases from that perspective where you have tools that are embedded that can automatically be used within the same context. There's a lot of platforms that we have that um, what I call intelligent AI is already built in, right? Things like, if you guys run on Salesforce or if you use Asana, right? There's already intelligent AI built within those platforms that that the employee base and the organization can easily make relative to what they're working on and kind of use it to their advantage and kind of eliminate some of that friction because it's within the context that they understand how the product is being used.
Yeah.
um, tend tend to be sticking to those use cases, and then over time, sort of mature into the more complex use cases and the things that folks may need to think out of the box more in terms of end user adoption to sort of use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Um, Laura, in your more decentralized sort of fashion in which you operate, does this shadow IT, is this shadow IT, or this, do you think this is just broad tool chaos, if you will? Um, the question really is, how are you trying to close that adoption gap when you have so many different tools that are at play?
Mhm. Yeah, we do have a little bit of a tool sprawl issue, and but quite honestly, our different product units don't even know what they're buying. It's like on someone's credit card or
Yeah.
different invoices come through. So right now I'm focusing on software asset management and just providing that visibility. So we have a suite. These are the within the central corporate functions. These are the tools that we use. But also, we have 1,400 different titles in our environment. That's absolutely crazy. So at least providing that visibility and ownership and accountability, I think we can start driving down some uses, some rationalization further than we've already done within those different
Yeah.
teams so that we can then get more out of
Yeah.
the main tools that we need.
Yeah. And again, from our world, and I think Laura, you and I have talked about this yesterday as well, right? Like with any transformation, there are this three aspects to it, right? People, process, technology. And in this AI world, in this AI transformation, if you think of AI readiness and people readiness, while AI is continuing to mature rapidly, it's already at a stage where people can actually get value out of it. The question is, are the people really ready,
Mhm.
right? So adoption from our standpoint is, how do we think about getting the people more ready? A couple of ways to kind of think about on our end has been, we really have asked our leaders to lean in more actively. It is not okay for just the CIO, the CTO to be driving this as a mandate for the company. Every functional leader needs to stand up and talk about how is AI important to them, because their functional teams are going to be looking at them, and my leaders expecting this, and that's how we need to lean in. So that's one thing. The second that John, you touched a little bit on, is that experience, right? There's just too much friction if there are so many tools out there for people to sort of navigate and swivel chair across tools. How do we sort of provide a more cohesive, simpler experience for people? That's obviously the journey that we're on. We've not necessarily solved all of it, but that seems to be the direction where we feel that adoption can be solved in a better manner. John, I'm going to come one more time to you. What's one practical tactic that's actually worked to make AI a more natural part of the workflow that reduces friction for you?
Yeah. Before I answer that really quick, just to add on to your last comment, I just wanted to mention that 70% of organizational learning is self-learning, right? So 10% is mostly driven by the enterprise, right? And then 20% is training that
Yeah.
that people pay for and take, right? So so with so with regard to AI, we can only do so much to influence in terms of getting the leaders to actually have the culture adopt and embrace AI, right? There is
Yeah.
a large part of AI that involves self-learning and the cultural ability to jump in and truly adopt that as part of the day-to-day work style, right?
Mhm.
So that's just an important topic. On the technology side, that's probably the toughest part of dealing with AI is just the amount of volume on tools and technology that's coming out month over month. If you guys think about the landscape from last year to now, and all the new tools and platforms that have come out from even the big players, but also from Asana, all new features and functionality, the pace to which these new releases are coming out make the standardization of AI tool set in the suite very, very challenging. which leads to some of the friction on adoption as well, because you really do need to standardize in order to sort of build off of and to train your workforce and really mature a platform, right?
Yeah.
So I tend to lean on the enterprise, on the intelligent AI side for that. Really for the platforms that we know we're going to keep and that we're going to continue to invest in, to try and optimize AI on top of those existing platforms to try to help reduce some of the friction that could exist. Um, for the completely net new sort of scenarios like agentic AI, right? That's more of a selection and choice on standardization of where we want to take that into the future, right?
Yeah.
So if you guys look at NAN, which is a pretty wide agentic workflow, wide and popular agentic workflow platform today. That's changed exponentially since last year as well. Right now, it's become more and more low code, where it was more for developers last
Yeah.
year. It's actually becoming more low code. So again, it's making sure that we can select the right platform to really build on for years to come, because the technology debt could become a really, really big issue if you tend to change that every
Yeah.
year.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
great. That makes sense. Um, Are you all standing up or have you stood up an AI council at your company? Because we have, and I hear a lot that companies are doing that. That might be another play, if done right, solving for that adoption gap as we talk about it. Because the way we're thinking at it at Asana is you want departmental representatives who are closer to the departments, those AI sort of champions, and they can be sort of the listening voices of what people are looking to do and should be doing, and things that we're rolling out from a central CIO organization, they can also help with that adoption perspective as well. And then so the culture that we've been trying to create at Asana has been more about how do we share our successes, our experiences, right? Be it at company Hollands, be it at uh, individual team sort of events. And again, that's where I feel that the leadership needs to have a role to play um, in making sure that they're creating space and attention around something like this. Any thoughts on this?
Definitely.
Yeah, I could add. So we started out with the traditional governance, or it was more legal compliance, security, tech, and very quickly it became we were a bottleneck because we didn't even have the capacity to look at as new ideas were coming through.
Hmm.
It took too long. So that's morphed over time, and we've pulled in procurement and all that. But I think now we've evolved to including our product leaders. So we do have the legal compliance tech, but we also have the product leaders. And the focus is, yes, protecting and building those guardrails, but also how do you go faster? And how do you enable people and the teams to get the tools that they need? Of course, keeping things secure. So that's really been our shift,
Yeah.
where we're trying to get that through. And even just certain environments that we have in the cloud, it's like we would lock things down so tightly even in a dev environment. So as long as we can, keep that protected, we should be able to go faster. So that's one area we've really been. And the second I would say is, I mentioned this earlier, like just sharing across the teams.
Yeah.
We didn't do that. And so like I've been facilitating those conversations, which they wouldn't happen naturally, which you'd think they would, product team to product team, but they're not. So we're getting a lot of really good feedback on just having different learning sessions and showcases and, different tool sets and, so they can find information. Because we have some product teams that are like, I'm good, I know what I need to do. And then we've got others that are, can
Looking
you
for
help
guidance.
me? Like
Yeah.
what are you seeing? Where should I start? So we have sort of, all forms,
Makes
but
sense.
it's starting to evolve more towards speed. But yet, you still have to protect the brand
Love
and
it.
the data.
Love it. Let's shift gears to ROI, right?
Mm.
A lot of uh, conversation is about that initial sort of piloting, letting the experimentation to happen, let a thousand flowers bloom, the kind of approach. But what really matters is the business outcomes, the value that we're getting, the ROI that we're getting out of this. John, I'll come to you. So beyond adoption, how are you measuring core productivity, and what does good really look like for you?
Yeah, there's really a couple different levers there. There's really mean time to complete, right? So taking a business process or an operation, measuring the current state, and then if we could come to a much stronger mean time to complete or mean time to resolution on that particular use case. We measure that and we kind of use that as an investment lever. as well as things like complexity. If it can reduce complexity and operational bottleneck, we measure percentage of complexity as
Yep.
part of the process. And then your two traditional levers around just cost out, and, if it's driving cost savings for the organization, if it's driving revenue for the organization, those
Yeah.
have the heaviest weights out of all of them. But I think it's just important to note that simple productivity plays with AI, those are those are obviously extremely valuable. But the hard levers, right? The hard savings, the hard numbers are what really matter when it comes to AI,
Absolutely.
from an organizational perspective, because you can really quantify your business case and really get investment behind your
Yeah.
your projects.
Laura, what about you?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things I would add. So one is internally the efficiency factor. I think what's difficult too is you can create internal efficiencies. It might be 10 minutes here, 20 minutes here, and so how do you kind of capture that as you think about your workforce and what they're doing? So again, it's like the measurements of speed, I would say, but also to our clients, it's really about, are we adding sales? Are we seeing the returns from the investments we're making?
Yeah.
Is it making their jobs easier? Can they get information faster so they can serve then their clients? So I think it's, sort of revenue on the one side and then sort of internal efficiencies and that which really then impact the potential sales if you're
Yeah.
doing the right work to help
Yeah,
the
it's very
clients.
consistent on our
Yeah.
end as well. I almost call this, I think the ground floor metric, almost a lazy metric, is adoption.
Mhm.
You want to see adoption happen, right? But then that in itself is not going to be enough. And then you want to quantify this more quantitatively in revenue growth, cost savings. Absolutely. If you're doing things around customer support, then what's the deflection that you're talking about, right? If you're doing things around sales productivity, are you seeing an actual increase in sales
Mhm.
productivity and stuff like that?
Absolutely.
John, you have I hear that you have a fantastic example around March Madness. How are you in that case connecting operational metrics to bigger picture? It's not just about the bits and bytes, the minutes saved, but how are you translating that to a business impact? Would you want to share that example
Yeah,
with everyone?
yeah, yeah. So most people don't realize the operation around March Madness. They kind of see the games on TV, and kind of the fandom is unbelievable around that championship. The events that happen before those teams get selected and go on TV, is an astronomical set of operations that happen in order to get those planes in the air and get those teams to the right cities and travel and operations, right? So we do have a couple use cases that we're piloting right now around using AI to help us with predictive selections modeling for the teams that make the tournament, based upon principles that we have for selections and bracketing, as well as for things like officiating assignments, right? To have AI to be smart enough to understand how we assign officials to games and help us with a lot of that automation and thinking, right? Really enough to give us a strong percentage of confidence that we can get a head start on those operations and planning once those decisions are kind of pushed forward with a high level of confidence,
Yeah.
right? So things like that, trying to use AI to really help streamline operations that will in turn give us more time to plan the travel operations for the championship.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's shift gear one more time to a rapid fire sort of
Yeah.
close. We've got a few minutes left. Uh, it's a question. Maybe start with you, Laura.
Mhm.
Looking ahead to 2027, is there one long-held belief or rule about running business that you believe enterprise AI will completely break?
Hmm. I think there's so many. Like where yeah, what won't it? I think is, as you think about 2027, but one area where it could break, I don't know, I think it's how you manage your talent
Hmm.
might be a good one. You've got human talent, you've got AI, like how do you pull those together? I think that might be one where it's a
Okay.
different way of solving problems. And now you've got agents, you've got, humans, so
All right.
be a good one.
John, what about you?
I think it's on the data side, really. I think it's the ability for AI to lead from the front on data analysis and predictive modeling and propensity models and things that are likely to happen based upon a historical data set or historical trends, right? Right now a lot of that is complicated ML and highly computational and high development. I think in the future that'll become more like generative AI is today, where it's going to be easier for folks to interact with their data to get those insights and to be able to drive a decision making moving forward.
Yeah.
Mm.
Um, in my case, I don't know if it's a long held belief, but something that I've been fascinated with that Dan, our CEO, talks about quite a bit, uh, is how moving fast and velocity is going to be truly a moat for companies going forward. And how do you sort of balance that by not putting out rubbish, subpar solutions, but really lovable solutions that you can continue to get better at, right? So early to kind of go build something, get a reaction. So that velocity piece is something that I feel that all companies need to sort of wake up and do more of. One more question, John. Maybe we'll start with you. What's the one single most important action leaders should be taking now to prepare to continue on this journey?
Mm.
Yeah, I think as of right now, just staying on top of what's happening out in the industry with AI, making sure that we understand our business and what the key levers are for the adoption of AI, and being able to marry the need to the actual solution. To me, that's the biggest challenge right now. Is we have all the use cases in the world, we have all the high value plays, taking those use cases and trying to figure out the solution architecture from a tool platform and component perspective, and how we deliver um, that particular product for the business, right? So I think it's a polymath sort of need around AI. It's not just knowing what the business wants; it's actually double down on understanding what tools and technologies are either emerging or starting to maintain effective positions in a product space.
Love it. Laura, what about you?
Yeah, I similar to John. I'd say leaning into what you're actually trying to solve for. And I love Dan's like minimum lovable product, right? Where it's like you don't have to go crazy, but build something or build upon something that your customers or your internal team like, and not try to do too much at the same time, because if it's not usable, as any customer, you're just going to dismiss it, not use it. So I think focusing there and just making sure you're collaborating and communicating. I think that's another big thing, is don't forget about what others are doing. So whether it's cross industry or within your own teams,
Yeah.
making sure you're aware and educated, and pulling that value together, I think is a
Yeah,
definitely.
and to your point on leaning in, that's
Mhm.
the thing that sort of strikes out to me as well. Being very intentional about it. I almost think of this as technology leaders. We've got to be very visibly creating an AI operating plan, which is all things people, talent, technology, build, buy, right? But come in front of your companies and be intentional and visible about driving this transformation. This is not something that will continue to happen while you're doing everything else.
Mhm.
You absolutely need to focus on what's the strategic priorities, but be very intentional about it, in my opinion. All right. Um, Great conversation. Let's close this out just to summarize for everyone. And John and Laura and I are going to be here for the rest of the day as well. So if anyone wants to catch up and connect later, we're happy to do that. Really, it's all about starting with some foundational, making the investments on the foundations and strategy. What are you solving for? Thinking about adoption, right? Thinking about how do you bridge that gap of adoption. It's not about rolling out AI tools and a bunch of those. It's how are you getting your people to start using it? And third, the most important really, how do you sort of get into the impact ROI around these investments? That's super important as well. I'd like to thank Laura and John for this
Thank you for
session.
having us.
Thank you so much. This was very helpful.
Cool.
Thank you.